Joining me now, first class father, Dr. Drew Pinsky. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's start like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
So we have triplets, thus three. And one of the most, the two standard questions we get is, when did you know that we were going to put it on a t-shirt? The first, it was a fertility campaign. We knew immediately, number one. And then number two, what was the latest one? Oh yeah. Do you have other kids? Do you have other kids? It's like, no, if you live through triplets, you aren't going to have other kids. It's quite a traumatic experience.
Yeah, I've interviewed a few dads that have done multiples, and it takes you through. I have 4 kids myself, but not all in one shot, So yeah. We had our first two 15 months apart, and that was challenging enough as it is. I can only imagine having them all together. So
yeah, it's very stressful, very stressful. So
it looks that way to be. If you could, Dr. Drew, maybe for a few people who don't know, if you could just take a second to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
So sort of a long story. It's all sort of weird serendipity. I was an internist. I was actually going to be a cardiologist, and I ended up moonlighting in a psychiatric hospital, and I got very good at the care of psychiatric patients, for the medical care primarily. And a lot of the medical stuff was down on the drug unit. So I ended up spending a lot of time on the drug and alcohol and got very good at that and learned about that and ended up taking over that program for 20 years. Alongside of that, so I was doing critical care medicine, inpatient medicine, outpatient medicine, medical, psychiatric, and then addiction. So I had sort of 4 careers going simultaneously. Alongside of that, I started doing a radio show back in 1983 at just an opportunity, this weird thing, this station that was a block away from my apartment just became very popular overnight. And people I knew people over there, and they sort of wanted me to come in and help them make a community service show, essentially. And at the time, one Anthony Fauci was pushing very hard on us younger physicians to go out and educate about this syndrome that we just stopped calling GRIDS and just were starting to call AIDS. And young people, I was shocked when I went up there the first time. Young people had never heard of it. It was just unbelievable to me. And so I thought, wow, I'll just keep doing this, and did it for 10 years, one night a week. I thought I was doing community service. It actually wasn't until 10 years later, my wife got pregnant with triplets 2 weeks after or before, I can't remember the exact timing, but right around the time they decided to put it on 5 nights a week. And I was like, well, I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? I was getting up at 5 a.m. and coming home at 10 o'clock at night. Did that for years. And my wife then went, hey, if you're out of the house 5 nights a week, that's no longer community service. That is a job. They're going to pay you for this. I really wasn't getting paid before that. And so it was her behest that I went in there hat in hand and asked if I could, be paid to go in, be on the radio 2 hours a night. Super crazy. And then these television producers showed up in the mid 90s, and I thought, what's that? How do you do a TV show? I have no idea. But I have no time for it. I could give you Friday afternoon and Saturday afternoon. And so Friday and Saturday afternoon is where they did Loveline, the TV show. And that led to other stuff. And everything's just been this big exploration. I mean, there's no blueprint for what I do. Even just this studio I'm in right now is in my house. I'm in massive denial that I operate a digital network out of my house and my wife runs it. It's like odd to me that we're doing that, but here we are. And just, as other things come up, I just explore them, try to find ways to get media to do good. That's really sort of been my task in media. And it really wasn't until about 2010, 2011 that I actually admitted to myself I was doing television. I really was very resistant. I was like, just leave me alone to practice medicine. Until about 2010, I thought, okay, you've got a show on HLN, you have a daytime show on CW, you have a nighttime show on radio, you have got Celebrity Rehab is coming back. Maybe you can admit to yourself that it's okay to focus on this for a while. So that's how that all happened.
Yeah, you've had a tremendously successful career. I always respect the work that you do at the rehab. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict myself.
Congratulations.
So I've always respected the work that you've done on that front. So then if you could take me back then to the beginning of the fatherhood journey here, Dr. Drew, how old were you when you became a dad, and how did that change your perspective on life?
Susan, my wife Susan and I have much the way there's used to be BC and AD, or whatever they call it, common era, and BC before the common era, AC and BC. We have before children and after children, BC and AC. Like there's a continental divide in our life, and that was it. we actually got pregnant. We were on a fertility campaign. We actually got pregnant once. But that had to be terminated because it was up sort of near the tubes and it was going to rupture the uterus, and there's all these sort of technical problems. And that made us, as a result of that, dependent on fertility treatment. So then we went full into it again, triplets. And we literally went from being this sort of fun couple, newly married, doing our thing, to our life is now parenting. I literally, we went, had an interesting experience where they kept telling us to reduce to twins, not because they couldn't get us 3 healthy babies, but because the impact of triplets is so profound on the health of the children, on the marriage survival, on the health of the parents, the safety issues. It just, the data is not good on triplet outcomes. And our obstetrician was like, look, I'll get you 3 babies, but I want you to know that here's the data. Don't do this. It's very stressful. And we went into a hotel for a weekend and tried to think through, how to make this decision. And we just finally realized that we couldn't terminate any part. Terminating, reducing from 3 to 2 risks the whole pregnancy. And how do you select? It's just, no, too much. And so I literally had this image in my head of playing poker and taking all my chips and pushing them all in. It's like, okay, we're just all in on parenting. That's it. That's how we're going to get through this. We're going to spend whatever it takes. We're going to do whatever it takes. You and I, all in. And that worked for us. And because we were willing to get help and horsepower, we needed manpower. That's the main thing with triplets. You got to have more hands. And we just spent on that. We brought people in and we got help and we did what we had to do, and it worked out for us. It then ended up being, our glorious, the arc of our life together. And interestingly, triplets intensifies everything. And so because we had this project together, you start to realize the importance of marriage and family and history and, what it is to commit to these things. That after that commitment to being all in on our family, as they get to be adulthood and stuff, the 2 of us share this extraordinary thing. The arc of our history, which was, like battle mates, you know what I mean? You get bonded by trauma. We were trauma bonded. We did it, and we have the satisfaction of doing it, doing a good job, and then creation of a family and these other lives. And this is what I really am disturbed about in terms of the conversation about marriage these days. People don't understand the commitment to forming a family. No one ever talks about that, right? That the fundamental purpose of marriage is this unit that is made as stable as possible to build a family structure and unit around it that, God willing, has multiple generational kinds of iterations. So the others, 3 generations down the line can continue to benefit from a similar kind of structure and stability and environment for childcare. The fact that most marriages don't work and marriage is tough and people don't have blah, blah, blah. Screw that. Stop it. You're really, yes, it's tough. You commit to it. And yes, I get it. Yes, we got to be better at that. But to unravel the fundamental unit and the value in that unit that people, Susan was always very vocal about that. Like she kind of wanted to be the head of a family, like be the matriarch sort of. I mean, not in any kind of formal sense, but that was important to her. And now I see, now that we've shared this thing and built this thing, I really see what it is that she was talking about.
Yeah, very well said, Dr. Drew. And I agree. And I think, the family unit is so important. I like what you said there, too, how there's a BC and AC, before kids and after kids. And part of that relationship with your wife going through having kids is you grow as a human being. You grow, you change, you develop. Yeah. And you can't get that kind of experience anywhere else on earth except by going through it. And I think so many people miss out on that or misjudge what family life really is all about. And I know it's, as I mentioned to you before we started, I work for the railroad. I've been doing that for 23 years. And whenever I would be offered a double at the job and stay an extra shift 8 hours, I would call my wife and say, hey, are you ready to do a double today? Yeah. Because she's got to do a double just like I do. Yeah. It means that she's got to do dinner by herself, bedtime by herself. Yeah. So you learn to have that. You're both in it together. And I was working. She stayed home to raise the kids. And that gets looked down upon so much today, where they say, stay-at-home mom, as if, that's all that you do. And that role has become, so much less than what it really is. And I would love to see us get back to that.
It's the most stressful job on earth. And to be fair, I was, I don't want to say selfish, but I was insensitive to some of the stuff you're talking about there. Cause I would work crazy hours. Like I said, get 5 a.m, 10 p.m. And I just expected my spouse to deal with that, right? Because she knew she married a doctor, and that's what I did, and that's the thing. And that was unfair. I feel bad about that, because I don't know how she put up with it. But she's an independent person, so it kind of worked for us. In terms of her also not being home, it's unthinkable. I don't know how we would have done it. So somebody's got to stick around. You don't have to do it full. I mean, I don't know. Somebody's got to be around. That's just the way it is.
That's what leads me into this, Dr. Drew. I mean, I talk on this show all the time about the fatherless crisis that we have going on, because we have so many kids growing up without a father in the home or a father figure. And in my opinion, it's the number one social issue we got going on in our country. And it's leading to devastating results. The stats are all over the place, and they're overwhelming. And I think that if we could get more dads back in their kids' lives, I think 90% of the problems we're seeing, maybe bring some God back into focus as well here. And those two things together, I think we would see the majority of the problems we're having right now disappear pretty quickly. What's your take?
Well, I've noticed two things: that a lot of the frustration with society, when people, society makes me this way and blah, blah, blah. When you sit down with those people and close the door, they always have extreme anger and hostility towards the father. It's just always there. And so somehow father represents society at large. The psychoanalysts sort of hypothesized that some time ago. I don't know. It seems like there's a pattern there, number one. Number two, the other pattern is, gentlemen, particularly the impact on your daughter of you abandoning or misbehaving or mistreating your wife. It's spectacular. Well done, gentlemen. They will then go out and find a guy just like you, who will do that to them. Really want that? Think about it. Whether it's abandonment or drinking or domestic abuse or aggression, whatever it is, that becomes the more traumatic, the more intense the love map. We have these sort of maps in our head built on the objects of our parent, and it's hard to undo that. It's hard to undo that. So think about that, guys. And if I hear these men all the time going, "Oh no, I had to move to Florida, but I sent her I call her on her birthday and Christmas. I'd send her a present." Are you effing kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Give me a break. Stop it. And human relations, human development is a very complicated process. It takes a long time to create a human being, and it requires other satellite central nervous systems and autonomic nervous system, bodies in space. You have to have other central nervous systems, other bodies attuning, present in the physical presence of that child for hundreds of thousands of hours to create a stable central nervous system that is able to go out in the world and function.
And part of that is disciplining the children as they grow up. And one of the things, especially one of the things that's missing when the father isn't there, is that other discipline portion, which is different than sometimes the way the mother disciplines. And for me, like I said, I have 4 kids. My youngest is my only daughter. She's only 8, but I definitely discipline her a lot different than I do my 3 boys. You have the 3 girls right out of the shop.
No, I have here, 2 boys. I have 2 boys and a girl.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You have the triplets right out of the shot here. So, what type of disciplinarian were you as a dad growing up, and was it different for you with your sons as it was with your daughter?
I'm not sure it was different for me, but let me just say that we found ourselves yelling a lot when they were about 3, and if you are yelling, there's a problem. And so we recognize that as something's wrong. We're out of control. We're yelling. So we went to a neurobehaviorist who said, read this book, do exactly what's in this book. And we did it, and it changed our lives. And at that time, it was sort of timeout sort of techniques at that time. and we just did it, and that's it. The one thing I learned most vividly is if you are feeling parenting is not about you, should have nothing to do with you. You should not be emotionally reacting. It should not be about your emotions, right? Of course, there's emotion involved in parenting, of course. But if you're having an emotional reaction and that emotion comes into the parenting, that's not parenting. That's not good parenting anymore. If you are having a anger or whatever it is, feel out of control, you feel overwhelmed, you missed parenting opportunities at least 3 steps before you felt like that. So the first time that they do something that you don't like and you're like, just let it go, you're going to pay up. It's going to keep going, and you're going to feel it's going to be more later. So that's the main thing I learned was I was missing opportunities much earlier where I should have been disciplining right away. And that helped a lot.
Yeah, we're definitely still learning as we go here. One of those was the 5 love languages. I know a lot of people suggest that to do with couples. We've done it with our teenage boys, and it was really eye-opening to do that. It really helped change the way that we discipline them now as we're going through those teenage years with them. So always willing to learn and change here as we go through it.
Especially when you're with teenagers, your job is to be the executioner. That's it. Your job is to drop the axe, not to be angry, not to have feelings about it. You just got to do it. Just drop the axe. That's it. And you can deal with them different. It's like, hey, I didn't do the behavior. I told you what was going to happen. My job now is to make sure that happens. That's it. It's going to happen. Whatever that was I said is going to happen is now going to happen. So next time, think about that. Don't do that maybe next time. And it's not about me, parent. It's about you and the choices you made. My job is to make sure that you become a healthy adult. And because of that, I have to do certain things that are unpleasant. I don't like doing it, but here it is.
Yeah, very well said. What would you consider to be the top values you hope to instill in your 3 kids growing up?
I've weirdly never really thought about that. I'd assume, value of family, value of hard work, value of saving, everything is in the Bible. Everything grandma said, weirdly enough, starts to be really important. I don't mean to be reactionary about it. I'm just saying that some of these basic things that, maybe my parents talked about in the 60s, but lo and behold, turned out to have pertinence. So importance of family, importance of saving, importance of hard work, importance of, giving back and other importance of relationships, I guess, is something that wasn't so much emphasized back in the day. I think it's more front and center these days, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, right on with that. How about as far as dating, when that started to hit your kids, when they got old enough to start hitting that dating scene, what kind of advice how'd you walk them through that?
Yeah, I kind of, to me, I felt like my job was more like like a herdsman or something with a corral, with a bunch of horses in it. Like, hey, get. It's like just moving the horses around and watching, make sure nothing bad happened. I really didn't. I don't remember sitting down and giving any real strong advice. I kind of let that up to them. I thought by that point, you're smart, you're thinking, I'm watching, so let's see how it goes. See what you like. So, yeah.
And obviously we just went through this whole pandemic thing. I know you've had your take on vaccines, and everybody seems to get some blowback if they don't agree with the party line.
Yeah.
What's been your role? I mean, I just had the Florida Surgeon General here on the podcast.
Oh, great! I'm talking to him tomorrow. I love that guy.
Dr. Latipo, great guy. Yeah. And really, all I asked him was about his advice on parents if they should get their kids vaccinated. His basic answer was trust your intuition. And I put that clip, and TikTok banned it. I had Dr. Robert Malone on the podcast. My video of him got taken down. So it's like anybody that has this kind of opinion that goes outside the box, they shut it down. What has that been like for you? And what is your advice to parents out there when it comes to this?
So it's been atrocious, but it's been better lately. And, physicians talking to physicians tend to be a little bit safer territory. And let me just tell you my position so everyone understands. First of all, COVID destroyed young lives. Well, not COVID so much as the fear that our government used as a way of controlling people, and then the lockdown. Reprehensible, unconscionable. We need a full examination of that policy and what it did, and maybe think about never doing that again and having constraints on what public health can do. That's my fundamental position. The excesses of this thing harm people like I can't even figure out how harmful the way more than the pandemic, than the illness itself. And by the way, young life's primarily affected by these excesses. And God knows what it's going to do to the 8 to 15-year-olds that were not able to go to school, and the like my kids that bounced back home because there was no work and everything was closed down, and there were riots in their neighborhood. It was just, this was a mess that we haven't begun to reckon with because we all have PTSD from it. So there's that. On the vaccine front, let me just say, let me just say, I'll put it all out there. From a masking standpoint, if you'd like to protect yourself, wear an N95 mask. No one should argue with that. To mandate a mask does not work and is insane. You do not protect anyone else with your N95. You protect yourself. So if you want to do that, go ahead, and we should respect that if people want to do that. No problem. On the vaccine side, again, I'm equally sort of moderate. I have a lot of geriatric patients in my practice, and they're all fully vaccinated and fully boosted, and I continue to boost them. The benefits after the age of 65, particularly after the age of 75, are clear. I know what I'm doing with the vaccine at that age group. I get it. The data's there. I use a lot of Paxlovid, though after, under 65, not at all clear what we're doing with the Paxlovid. There's lots of recurrences and things with it, but it sure does work. On the early treatment and all that controversy, I was always supportive of my peers being able to do what they thought was best in the best interest of a patient. But those early treatment things, those words that if I say you'll get kicked off YouTube now, they don't work. They just don't work. Not the way Paxlovid works. So fine, they don't work. Continuing on the vaccine, I have grave concerns about sort of 17 to 35-year-old males getting the vaccine. There was an article just came out yesterday. People are criticizing the group that published it, but the data was really the first good data on the relative risk of COVID itself versus the vaccine. That's the question. Is COVID worse than the vaccine? That's what's got to be answered. Same thing in the pediatric population. You must answer that question. And the interesting thing in pediatrics, though, you have to also compare it against other serious illnesses like measles. Like what risk do we generally tolerate in pediatric populations? I'm an adult physician, so I don't know how to answer that one, but I do adolescent and young adults, and I've been gravely concerned about the myocarditis risk, and I've seen a lot of it, by the way, not from COVID, from the vaccine, so therefore that biases my opinion. And we're still going to argue that one out. We'll see. So you see how it's complicated. It's a navigation. It's always that way in medicine. And the fact that anybody who's not clinical has an opinion is absurd. It's ridiculous that people are, having learned how to pronounce the name of medication and the next day have an opinion about it. That's bizarre. Or a very complicated vaccine landscape. It's also bizarre, though, that physicians have camps, vaccine camps. That's never seen anything like that in my life. That's bizarre. And that's a problem with my profession that we need to kind of deal with. So it's complicated, right? It's complicated.
And not having obviously any kind of medical, knowledge or nothing like that, just from a civilian common sense point of view, what we witnessed was absolutely very mind boggling to see what people were doing, the way they changed behaviors during this. And to your point, my oldest son is a junior in high school now. He was in 8th grade towards the end of his 8th grade year when this happened, and he didn't have an 8th grade graduation, didn't have an 8th grade dance. His freshman year in high school was completely isolated, no lockers, no homerooms, no. It was like completely the way his experience his development has been hurt by this. It's very obvious that you could see it.
My sincerest hope is that those kids, as they enter adulthood, look back on this and are pissed. They should be furious. They've been robbed. And they should act accordingly as citizens and voters and adjust the system a little bit. It needs constraints. I'm not saying that there is never a circumstance where public health shouldn't have fiat authority. They shouldn't have fiat authority all the time whenever their whim suggests they need it. That's insane. And these people are, by the way, not clinically trained for the most part. And if they're clinicians, they're pediatricians and not trained in adult medicine, and it's different. Just the way I was talking about the pediatric population being different, I'm not making judgments there. Pediatricians shouldn't be making decisions about adults. The reason a lot of the public health officials are pediatricians is most public health was vaccine therapy, programs in children. So naturally, they got those jobs. You saw the incompetence and how ill-equipped they were for this particular pandemic.
And it just seems like now so many people have lost faith in the public health system just because there's been so many different people that have no one tells you the truth. And it seems like it should be easier to get the truth now than ever, but it seems to be so much more complicated.
Look, my thing, this setup here I'm sitting here in was my wife's and I attempt to sort of, we felt like we were the French underground. We were broadcasting all the way through the pandemic, like helping people make sense of it. Calm down. Panic never makes things better. Let's get through this together. Let's try to make sense of it, blah, blah, blah. And, I was very supportive of our government's excesses at the beginning because look, it's an unclear situation. They're in a tough position. They don't want to get hurt. They're making, extreme decisions, but okay, I'll support it. And then after 9 months and 12 months, 18 months, I thought, you gotta be kidding. And I literally, and then the press forget it. I mean, the press really, I think they destroyed themselves during this. This is, the New York Times editorial boards demanding lockdown, having an opinion about non-pharmacological medical interventions. You have no business having an opinion. Anyway, that's my piece.
Yeah, and then bringing it back into you as a father here, have any of your kids followed in your footsteps in your line of work? Any of them showed any interest in either getting behind the microphone, behind the camera, or into the doctor field?
No, they all don't like media. They all don't like that. 2 have kind of flirted with biology periodically, and they like it, and then they go away from it. And they've seen how I had to struggle to do good medicine. They saw how painful it is to practice medicine today. And it just is. And if it's not your calling, if you're not something you have to do, you shouldn't do it. And it was clearly my calling. It's something I could not imagine life without. The fact that I don't do as much of it as I used to is sort of mind warping to me because it was so much part of my identity that I don't do hospital care anymore. It's just, I can't process that. I walked into a hospital every morning of my life for 35 years, and now I don't do that anymore. It's like, I can't, who am I? It's sort of what I ask myself, but I am trying to use other modalities to, I had such a broad, crazy experience that physicians aren't getting anymore, both working in the psychiatric setting, addiction setting, critical care, and general medical. No one has that. No person experiences that anymore. And so I want to try to give back what those insights have given me.
Yeah, very cool. And I know right now we're in the holiday season here, Christmas, Hanukkah, the whole big coming towards the end of the year. You guys have any kind of family traditions that you do around this time of the year that you keep going with?
They're very light. We try. And my dad family was very Jewish. And so it's sort of an homage to him. We sort of try to practice Hanukkah candles and things just as a nod to him and his family. No one we're Jewish, my mom wasn't, my wife isn't. So it's sort of a vestige of that heritage. My wife likes to decorate the house, but that's coming soon. We haven't gotten to that yet. We go to the Rose Parade every New Year's Day, which is, right up the street here from where we live. So that's when my daughter was asked this question, she said that was her ritual every year. So we're not much about rituals, but we do kind of hang out. We definitely all around during the holidays for sure.
Yeah, we still got one believer with we're still doing the elf on the shelf over here. That was looking at your bobblehead there. You can make a little like Dr. Drew on the shelf kind of thing going on there.
You got good instincts. So you say that again to my wife and it'll show up and, yeah,
you get a little book, a little story to go behind it. There you go.
No, yeah, this thing will show up in Sri Lanka or something. They'll picture it on Instagram.
Well, obviously you've had so much success on your career path here. What's next for you? Any projects that you're working on? What do you got coming in the new year for you?
Well, strangely, I do have something. I was just going to say, I don't know. I keep exploring, and anything turns up, I try to explore it. But I do have something I did that's going to air on January 4th, which is on Fox. It's called Special Forces, where I went to the Wadi Rum Desert in Jordan with 15 other celebrities, and we trained as Navy SEALs. And let's say, it should just be named, a bunch of celebrities get their asses handed to them. And so it's really intense. And we all became great friends because, again, that's why that trauma bonding is sort of on my mind. We all were really bound by that trauma. And it was an extraordinary experience and a good one. And do watch. You will learn. More than anything, you'll learn what Navy SEALs have to go through. It's extraordinary.
Wow. Yeah, I love the Navy SEAL community. I'm friends with so many of them. I've had over 65 SEALs on the podcast here. So I love their community. I love what they're all about.
It's not everybody can do it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Not everyone can do it, and God bless those that can. I am full respect.
Yeah. All right. So I look forward to that. Last thing I want to hit you with here, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
If you're just getting into it, just understand your life will change, and it changes everything. I don't want to say something that sounds pejorative or negative, like your life will never be the same. It sounds ominous, but it changes everything. And the one thing you will never search for again is meaning in your life, because you always can turn to that, and bringing another person successfully into adulthood. It's hard to understand how people find meaning without that, frankly. That I feel bad for people. They make your choices, whatever, I get it. But boy, our kids are 30 now, and we're seniors, which we can't believe. And you can really, you don't search around for meaning after you've got that behind you and you've done that and built that. It's always there, and it's sort of fundamental. Now, having said that, get help. Don't be afraid to get help, and just dig in and understand that there's another thing we haven't talked about yet. There's something about babies, human babies, is that dads often, not always, but typically can't suffice for the baby. The baby wants mom. So when you step in and you want to give your wife a spell, do that, but understand what happens to the mom is different than what happens to you. With the baby, I've always imagined it in my mind's eye as hooks up a tube to the baby, to the mom. The baby hooks a tube up. It's no longer an umbilical cord, but it's this ineffable tube that sucks her soul right out of her 24/7. And that's what the baby wants. And support your wife accordingly.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. It's been an honor for me. I got to say, Dr. Drew, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Pleasure to be here.